This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast brought to you by Agriland and AXA, keeping you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Charles O'Donnell and I'm joined by Agriland journalists Aisling O'Brien and Cathal O'Shea and Agriland beef specialist Breifne O'Brien. Before we get into the main news of the week, we just have some breaking news to bring you straight away, which is that Minister for Agriculture Martin Hayden has announced that updated reference costs will be in place for all eligible applications submitted in Tranche 10 of the Targeted Agricultural Modernisation Scheme, or TAMS. This tranche will open for applications on September 10th. This is a breaking story, so be sure to check out our article on the Agriland website and app. But apart from that, the biggest story of the week is that the EU has officially set in motion the process of ratifying the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. Aisling, few topics have generated more discussion in recent years in agriculture than this trade agreement has. And after all that talk, it looks like it's going to become a reality, in spite of the concerns of farm organisations, rural politicians and the Irish government. So the best place to start maybe is an explanation of what this trade agreement will actually do when it comes to agriculture.
Yeah, Charles, as you said, essentially decades of negotiations have led up to this week, and we did see a political agreement reached in December between the EU and the four Mercosur countries of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. So the official name for the trade agreement is the EU-Mercosur Partnership Agreement. Took a big step forward, as you said, this week because the Commission has put forward its proposal to ratify this trade deal. Now, the deal is going to require approval from the European Parliament and the Council of the EU before it can be ratified. Now, the European Commission said that this agreement will boost trade and investment on both sides. It will contribute to economic growth and job creation, and it will foster the sustainable development of both regions. It'll actually create the world's biggest free trade zone, covering a market of over 700 million consumers. And according to the Commission, they say that the deal could increase EU annual exports to the Mercosur bloc by up to 39% or €49 billion, supporting more than 440,000 jobs across Europe. So to put it into context, Charles, last year, the EU's exports to the four Mercosur countries amounted to some €53 billion, and agri-food exports from the EU to Mercosur were worth around €3.3 billion last year. Now, on the flip side, Mercosur's exports to the EU were worth €57 billion last year, and the biggest exports to the EU from the Mercosur bloc in 2024 were agricultural products, which accounted for nearly 43% of total exports. So agri-food exports from the EU to Mercosur under this deal, according to the Commission, are expected to grow by almost 50% because essentially the deal will reduce high tariffs which are currently in place on EU agri-food products such as wine and spirits. Those would be up to 35% currently. Chocolate is at 20% and olive oils at 10%. And under the deal as well, for some dairy products, zero duties will gradually apply within certain quota limits. And those products would be cheese, milk powder and infant formula. Also, some 344 products covered by EU geographical indications, GIs, those protected products that we are familiar with, they will be protected from imitation by Mercosur countries under this deal as well. Now, as you said, Charles, one of the biggest issues of contention for some EU member states on this deal, including Ireland and France, among others, is around the issue of beef imports from Mercosur countries, which they believe will place EU farmers at a disadvantage. Now, the Commission has stressed this week that the agreement does not give duty-free access to the EU for Mercosur beef. They say that it will allow 99,000 tonnes of Mercosur beef to enter the EU market with a 7.5% duty. Now, 55% of the quota is going to consist of fresh or chilled meat and 45% of lower value frozen meat. Now, the overall volume, the Commission said, is 1.5% of total European beef production, and it's less than half of the current imports from Mercosur, which are around 206,000 tonnes at the moment. Now, under this agreement, the EU will allow as well a quota of 180,000 tonnes of poultry to be imported duty-free into the EU. And this volume would be phased in over 5 years. And the Commission said this represents 1.3% of total EU production. And it's lower than current imports from Mercosur as well. Now, the Commission said that any product entering the EU market has to comply with the EU's stringent food safety standards. And it said that the Mercosur agreement does not change that, because that has been a big cause of concern as well for farm organisations. And the Commission said that it will progress steps towards the potential alignment of production standards on pesticides and animal welfare, which are applicable to imported products as well. Now, the Commission, I suppose, part of its moves to allay the fears of farmers has announced these bilateral safeguards under the deal. Now, the Commission said that it hadn't reopened the agreement, but it had listened to concerns across the European Union from farmers about the deal. So it said for sensitive products like beef, poultry or sugar in particular, access to the EU market will be permanently limited through these gradually implemented quotas that we just discussed. And it said that the bilateral safeguard clause can be applied in case increased imports from Mercosur cause or even threaten to cause serious injury to those relevant EU sectors as well. And the safeguard clause also covers imports under tariff rate quotas. Now, according to one EU trade official who was briefing journalists this week, it is envisaged that the legislation on the safeguards will be put into force and will be ready to be put into force at the same time as the trade portion of this deal, which is called the interim trade agreement. Now, the safeguards outlined by the Commission, we have this in detail on our website, Charles, and our app. So, I mean, if you want to have a look at this in detail, it is quite complicated, as trade deals tend to be. You can have a look at it, but, you know, it will be something the Commission said they will be keeping a very close eye on it. They'll be monitoring imports and looking at the data every 6 months. And if it does trigger cause for concern, or if member states do raise a red flag on this, they will come into action. And they said that, if there is evidence that the market has been disrupted, it will take swift action as well. They're given a commitment of within 21 days where evidence is apparent as well. Now, the Commission believes that the deal is going to have a limited impact on the EU beef market, and it said it will not generate further deforestation in the Mercosur countries. Of course, that has been a huge, I suppose, bone of contention as well. Will this lead to poorer environmental standards across the Mercosur countries, including deforestation of the Amazon rainforest, for example? But the Commission is saying no, that this deal has safeguards in place against that. And the Commission also said that there will be a unity safety net for crisis measures with a total fund there of €6.3 billion. And they said this reinforced support will help safeguard European farmers in times of market disturbances and growing geopolitical uncertainties as well. So as I said, Charles, the Commission said it has introduced a range of measures to address farmers' concerns about the Mercosur trade deal. And Peter Power, who's the head of the European Commission in Ireland, said that the Commission has listened to farmers and it has taken the necessary steps to resolve their concerns. Have a listen.
The beef imports were the particular concern. We have quotas which will be gradually introduced and filled over several numbers of years. We also have a situation where if there is market disturbance, if the imports exceed expectation, the Commission will examine the situation and take measures that will bring order to the market again. There's also a fund of 6 billion set up, which will help if there is market disturbance.
And that was Peter Power there, the head of the European Commission in Ireland. Now, Aisling, can you talk us through the process of what happens next with Mercosur? Because the EU's bureaucratic process can be complex at the best of times. And there's an added complication of how the trade part of the deal will be treated differently to the rest of it. So what happens now?
Yeah, so this has been flagged, over recent months, Charles, about the so-called splitting of the deal. And the European Union has confirmed this week that there will be no role for national parliaments of EU member states to ratify or reject the trade elements of the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. Now, there will be some aspects of the deal that will need to be ratified individually by parliaments in member states. The trade aspects will not, and that would obviously include the causes for concern for farmers when it comes to the sensitive products we were talking about there as well. The EU essentially has argued that because trade is within its own exclusive competence and it's not a shared competence with member states, it can be ratified through its own legislative process. So essentially that means that the big decisions, as I said earlier, are going to be made by the European Council and the European Parliament as well. So the trade agreement can be ratified only with a qualified majority in the Council of the EU, meaning 15 member states representing 65% of the EU population, and a simple majority then in the European Parliament. So the trade aspects of the deal would then enter into force as an interim trade agreement, assuming that they do get the approval of the Council and the Parliament. And that's despite, even if the wider partnership agreement takes many years to ratify, that trade agreement will come into force if it gets the green light from the Council and from the European Parliament. So that's kind of how things are being rationalised at European level. And that's why European, national parliaments are not going to be having a say on the trade side of this deal.
And obviously, Aisling, there's been a lot of reaction to this across the board. What have people been saying about it?
Yeah, so let's start with the Irish government firstly, Charles, because it has said that it's going to be examining this proposal to ratify the partnership agreement to see if it provides any of the additional assurances required by the government. And look, we know that the Taoiseach Simon Harris, who of course is Minister for Trade as well, and Minister for Agriculture Martin Hayden have been engaged at European level with their counterparts across Europe to outline Ireland's concerns in relation to the Mercosur deal, particularly when it comes to beef and the impact on our farmers. And Minister Hayden said this week that pending the outcome of that examination by the government, he said that Ireland's position on the agreement remains as clearly outlined in the programme for government, that they would work with like-minded EU countries to stand up for Irish farmers and defend our interests in opposing the current Mercosur trade deal. And he's going to be in Copenhagen, Martin Hayden, this weekend at an informal meeting of the Agri-Fish Council. So he's going to be outlining Ireland's concerns at that meeting as well over the weekend. Now, I suppose the opposition TDs have been out in force about this as well. Sinn Féin spokesperson on agriculture, Martin Kenny, said that the deal is a bad deal for Irish and EU farmers. He said it always has been. And he called on the government to oppose ratification of the deal and said that the government should use its influence with other member states to oppose Mercosur. The Irish Farmers Association President Francie Gorman also echoed those sentiments. He called on the government to stand up for farmers now when it comes to this EU-Mercosur trade deal. And he said the Commission would probably like to push things through without much discussion, but we'll be looking to other member states which have issues with the deal to back us here. And he said there's also a role for Irish MEPs to build alliances with their colleagues to mount a blocking vote to this deal in the European Parliament as well. Now, the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association, the ICMSA, President Dennis Drennan said that the decision by the Commission to adopt this proposal to ratify the deal was a calculated betrayal. He said that Irish farmers producing beef subject to the most stringent sustainability and environmental regulations and oversight imaginable would have their beef side by side on European supermarket shelves with cheaper South American beef, which he said is produced to notably lower standards of regulation as well. The Irish Cattle and Sheep Farmers Association President Sean McNamara said that the decision by the Commission to push ahead with the Mercosur deal is a direct betrayal of Irish farmers, EU climate commitments and democratic accountability. And he said that the Commission can dress this up any way they like, but make no mistake, Irish and European beef farmers are being sacrificed so German car makers and other industrial sectors can profit. And Copa Cogeca, the umbrella organisation representing farmers and agricultural co-ops across Europe, said that the Commission's proposals fall short. They said that some of their concerns, had been addressed with the announcement this week, but they said that the agreement remains a threat to sustainability and fair competition. And they said that critical questions remain over how a unilateral legal act would be voted on, enforced and accepted by Mercosur countries, pointing to those safeguards that the Commission feels are going some way to allay the fears of farmers across the European Union. And I suppose, look, Charles, before we leave it there obviously has been huge renewed focus on ratifying trade deals in recent months across the European Union, given the fact that US President Donald Trump is unveiling suites of tariffs on countries across the world. And I think there is an impetus we saw from Maroš Šefčovič, the EU Commissioner on Trade this week as well, speaking about how dynamic it is out there at the moment and fighting to get into every market and talking about the need to ratify this deal as well. And also this week, the Commission announced plans as well to put forward proposals to ratify the EU-Mexico Modernised Global Agreement, which aims to build on an original agreement dating back to the year 2000. And the Commission saying that this would be a good deal for farmers because Mexico is a net food importing country. So we'll see how that deal progresses as well, Charles. But yeah, definitely a huge step forward in terms of the Mercosur trade deal this week.
Well, we're going to bring in our journalist Cathal O'Shea here, because Cathal, you actually went to Kilcullen Mart in Kildare yesterday to get a sense of what farmers had to say about the Mercosur trade agreement. What was the mood?
Hi Charles. So yeah, that's right. We attended Kilcullen Mart yesterday for what turned out to be a brilliant sale, with a range of animals attracting plenty of farmers. We got to speak to most of these farmers on the whole trade agreement. The general consensus, I suppose, was fear and disappointment in the deal. Many farmers are continuing to sell a lot of stock with this fear, thinking that prices will drop rapidly once it starts to go ahead. One haulier even mentioned how sheds are emptying out at the minute and there'll be plenty of empty sheds this winter overall. A number of farmers expressed their disappointment in beef quality and that may flood the market, and as well as that raised concerns about the environment and said that it kind of belittles the hard work that Irish farmers are doing in terms of sustainability at the minute. Several locals we spoke to also expressed their disappointment in their local TD and the Minister for Agriculture, Martin Hayden, stating that he isn't doing enough to prevent this agreement from going ahead. However, there was a few buyers there who did mention that it would be good, bringing down the prices of beef overall. But I suppose overall, Charles, the mood at the Mart did not reflect positively on this situation at all.
Thanks for that, Cathal. Well, we'll leave Mercosur for now, but we will stay in the area of beef. We're going to bring in our beef specialist, Breifne O'Brien, for an update on the state of play for cattle prices at the minute. So, Breifne, what's the latest?
Yeah, Charles. So this week's factory quotes for beef cattle have seen several, but not all outlets move to cut their beef price offers for this week. So several outlets have reduced their base price offers by 10 cent per kilo on prime cattle. Cow price has also come under a little bit of pressure, with the higher rates from last week cut for this week and the lower prices from last week generally holding for this week. So, of course, the arrival of September and the change in weather conditions that we've seen this week and last week traditionally cause a rise in supplies of finished cattle. However, it's been well publicised this year that the drop in finished cattle availability this year is expected to limit the extent of this autumn supply increase. So generally speaking, prices this week are at $7.50 and $7.60 on the grid for steers and heifers respectively, with some outlets starting offers below these levels for this week. Cows are at $7.30 to $7.40 for O grades. The general run of O grade cows are being quoted at €7 per kilo, with plainer type O grade cows at $6.80 to $6.90 per kilo. P grade cows are being quoted at $6.90 this week, with plainer P grade cows being quoted at $6.60 to $6.70 per kilo. And I suppose it's important to note that there is plenty of variation in cow prices between outlets again this week. Under 24-month bulls are at $7.40 per kilo for O's, $7.60 for O's and $7.70 for U's, with some finishers managing to secure a little more than this. Under 16-month bulls are being quoted at approximately $7.50 per kilo on the grid this week.
And just while we have you here, Breifne, we just want to get a word from you on the sheep trade. Where are factory prices sitting at the minute?
Yeah, Charles. So this week's sheep trade sees lamb prices cut by 10 to 15 cent per kilo, with price offers for culios remaining at the same level as last week. Lambs have been quoted at tops of $7.90 per kilo all in, with some farmers managing to secure more than this, and the tops of the culios are being quoted at up to €5 per kilo.
Thanks for those updates, Breifne. Well, changing track now and moving over to the dairy sector, and we saw some important market updates this week in the form of the global dairy trade and the Ornua purchase price index. What's the latest here, Aisling?
Yeah, so the average GDT price index decreased by 4.3% this week following the latest auction, which took place on Tuesday. The price index now stands at 1,209. That is down from the high this year on May 6th of 1,344. And all products, including milk powders, mozzarella and butter, saw decreases in average price at this week's auction. Cheddar was the only one to see a bounce in average price, rising by 3.6%. And closer to home, the Ornua monthly PPI for the month of August stands at 151.4, which is down from the previous month of 153.6. Ornua's estimate of member co-ops processing costs was 9.3 cent a litre in the month, which is unchanged from July. And after deducting estimated processing costs, Ornua's PPI implies an indicative return of 44.7 cent a litre, which is VAT inclusive of 5.1%. And that is down from the indicative return in the previous month of 45.5 cent a litre. And Ornua said the results reflect weaker market returns for the month of August. Now, staying in dairy related news, and Ornua and the National Dairy Council have revealed the 12 finalists for this year's Quality Milk Awards. You can find the full list on our website and app, and the overall winner and the category award winners will be announced at a special ceremony in Kilkenny on October 23rd. Well done to all of the finalists. Very prestigious competition, and to make it this far, and best of luck in the final as well in October. And finally, the AXA National Dairy Show announced this week that Cord Horman from Lower Saxony in Germany will be the judge at this year's event. The 41-year-old is the owner and operator of Wilcor Holsteins, and he's recognised across Europe and beyond for his expertise in Holstein breeding and showmanship. And of course, the AXA National Dairy Show will return to the Green Glens Arena in Mill Street in County Cork from October 10th to 11th. And if you want to enter, the entries are open now on the Irish Holstein Friesian Association website. The closing date for entries is Friday, September 19th.
And just while we're on the dairy sector, the most used sires to date in 2025 on dairy farms has been revealed by the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation. And you can check out the article from our dairy specialist Hugh Harney on our website and app. Well, one issue that is very important to dairy farmers is nitrates, including fertiliser use. And in this area, the Department of Agriculture issued an important update this week, specifically on unprotected urea. Can you tell us more about this, Aisling?
Yes, Charles. So the department issued a text message to farmers this week reminding them that unprotected urea in solid form will no longer be permitted to be spread on land after September 14th of this year. Now, the department said moving from unprotected urea to urea in a protected form is a key element of Ireland's approach to reducing ammonia emissions and ensuring continued compliance with ammonia reduction targets. So this restriction applies to all urea nitrogen products with ureic N content of 1% or above, and that includes products blended with secondary macronutrients such as sulfur and or micronutrients such as selenium. But the restriction does not apply to blends or compounds containing unprotected urea and phosphorus, and unprotected urea can still be used in liquid form as a fertilizer as well. So the department has asked farmers to use up, where possible, any stocks in 2025, weather permitting. Now, the IFA Environment Committee Chair John Murphy has called on the department to show some flexibility around the spreading of unused stocks of unprotected urea, which are currently on farms. And he said that many farmers will have relatively small amounts of unprotected urea left on their farms, but they should be given the flexibility to spread this next spring and not be forced into spreading it in the coming days, because he said that could lead to farmers spreading in less than ideal weather weather conditions before the cut-off date of September 14th, and the IFA is seeking a phased transition period to allow farmers to use up existing stocks in spring of next year. So we'll see what, if anything, comes from that request. But just, it is a reminder, if you have unprotected urea on your farm, have a look at what you have in stock, because the deadline is approaching.
Well, staying on the issue of the environment, a national dialogue on nature restoration has been launched by the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage. These so-called community conversations will see 10 events held across the country in September and October, and you can read more about them on our website and app. But we'll move on now to farm safety, and a new farm safety programme has been launched on the issues of labour and isolation. Can you tell us more about this, Aisling?
Yes, Charles, this is a really interesting initiative brought forward by Irish Rural Link, and it's called the Farm Safety Community Champion Programme, and it's funded by the Department of Agriculture. Now, Irish Rural Link said the initiative was brought about by the growing decline of local farming networks in Ireland, which are leading to a lack of social connection and workforce shortages. So 9 regionally spread farm safety community champions from various backgrounds, including farming, teaching and community mentoring, are being trained up. And these champions then will develop networks in their regions to connect farmers to their communities, deliver farm safety and wellbeing talks at local marts and community centres. And a manual has been created as well to guide these events too. And it will include resources for local individuals to learn more about the programme and the steps that they can take to encourage a connection with farmers in their local society. And Irish Rural Link is also calling on local communities to organise a farmers' haggard as part of this programme, which will be led by these farm safety community champions, and it will encourage farmers to help one another in simple tasks on the farm. So a really interesting initiative, and you can find out more about it on the Farmers for Safety website if it's something that you want to get involved in. And before we leave the topic, Charles, a reminder that our own Farm Safe, Farm Well series on Agriland is continuing in association with the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine and AXA Insurance. And the latest instalment of the series, which we released this week, features David and Michael Kennedy from County Tipperary. Now, the brothers might be familiar to people from social media. They've hundreds of thousands of followers across various platforms, and they speak about the importance of minding your mental as well as your physical health. And they speak about the impact of the deaths of their sister Sarah in a car crash in 2010 and their mother Mary after a short illness in December of last year. And they speak about, I suppose, the stresses that are brought about daily by farming. They're organic sheep farmers as well, and it is really worthwhile checking out their journey. They speak about how grief led them to turn to food, and comfort eating piled on the weight. David went on a journey losing 8.5 stone. Michael shed some 4.5 stone, and they speak really eloquently about getting your mind, set in order and having a positive mindset, but also, I suppose, adopting some healthier attitudes. And I think all of us could probably take some of their advice on board. So definitely please check out the latest instalment of Farm Safe, Farm Well on our website or app. Thank you.
That's where we'll leave it for today. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars and share The Farming Week with anyone you think might be interested. From Aisling, Breifne, Cathal and myself, all the best.
This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.